or something like that. It's completely up to you. I cannot be the judge of that. But what I'm aiming at here is that regardless of the course quality, you should use other resources to actually prepare for this exam. I will try to my best ability to go over every and each subject, but a book or some prep work on the net, for example, primarily those books or scripts or something of a kind which was made specifically for the Red Hat exams, would also be a good idea to take a look. There is a ton load of them. A lot of them are free, so you don't need to pay anything extra or anything of a kind. Just take up your favorite search engine and start searching. You will find them on the net, I guarantee it to you. That is also one of those nicer ways to actually prepare for the exam as well. But aside from that, just follow through the course and you should amass a good amount of knowledge by the end of it. Anyway, here we have these major titles: understand and use essential tools. Down below, it's operate running system. Boot, reboot, and shut down the system normally, boot systems into different targets manually, etc. This will be quite important for later on, but these are more complex subjects. We first need to deal more with shell and commands in order for us to be able to even begin to understand what these things are. I mean, it's fairly simple to understand what they are, but how you actually control them, how you manipulate the process is another matter entirely. So we will learn pretty much everything that there is to learn about operating Red Hat operating system and how you can play around with it, so to say. Configure local storage. Very important. So you will need to partition disks manually. We have done the simplest of simple in terms of partitioning during the installation process, but now we're going to do something a lot more complex, and you will be able to see how you can actually partition manually only in a shell. It's pretty simple, no big deal there. You will be able to create new partitions, delete partitions. We will also touch the subject of encryption as well. A very good way to protect your data. Anyway, create and configure file systems. This is going to be very nice, as we're going to be able to format our, well, I don't know, a USB, a disk, a partition, or whatever into these formats. So you got VFAT, I'm looking for exFAT. Okay, it's not written here, it doesn't really matter. But these are just some of the formats that are acceptable for file systems in Linux. There are others, of course. This one by far is the most popular, I would say, for desktop users anyway. But we shall see how this plays out once we actually get to it. If you're uncertain as to what this is, Windows uses NTFS. Perhaps you have heard about it. That's a file system that they use. But even if you don't have a clue what I'm talking about now, you do not need to be concerned or anything of a kind. I will, as I said before, and as I say again, and I will mention it again at some point of time in the future, I will go to pretty much every step. No step will be skipped. You, as a beginner, will be able to understand and comprehend what I'm doing and follow with ease. Anyway, mounting, extend, this pretty much all goes into the title, create and configure file systems, but not going to talk about it now. As I said, I'm going to talk about it when we actually get to it. Down below you have deploy, configure, and maintain systems. Mainly, we're going to deal a lot with configuration files here. That's going to be a bit interesting because we're going to need to edit them, create some scripts of our own, which are fairly simple to create. Basically bunch up a bunch of Linux commands in one file, which we can execute, and they will get executed in that order, which is very nice. You can automate tasks very easily like that. Manage users and groups. Very, very, very important, especially for a network administrator. You as a network administrator will continuously have to create users, groups, change permissions. It's a tedious work, I know, but company structure changes, new employees come and go. I mean, new employees come, old employees go. So you will be required to delete users, add new users, add them to groups, change their permissions within groups, and so on. We're going to be dealing here with basically users and what they are allowed, well, maybe not so much what they're allowed to do, but how would you create a user? How would you add it? A proper way to do it, so to say, not just randomly create things and give them basically default permissions, which is not always a good idea. It can be a good idea, of course, but not always. Anyway, down below we're gonna get into one of how should I put this? This is a very hot subject. Let me put it so. Security. You need to be proficient in this area, in this chapter, because look, realistically looking, whatever survey you make out there, there will be several things that will be of high priority. Everything else, well, it can be figured out, mistakes can be allowed to happen, and so on. But here, when a mistake happens, it's basically uh, somebody exploits it, they can steal your entire database or they can wreak havoc on your servers. So you need to be proficient in security. You need to know how to configure firewall settings. And configuring the firewall in Red Hat or in Linux in general is not just about security, it's about network traffic as well. How do you want it to go? How do you want it to travel? Where do you want it to go? Redirecting the traffic and so on and stuff of a kind. It's very nice. You will see it's an open source firewall and you can do so many things. It is amazing. There's practically nothing that you cannot do with this firewall. It says firewall or IP tables. Basically, IP tables will be the command that we shall be using if I'm not mistaken. And down below, you have to configure keys based authentication for SSH, so you don't have to actually type in the password every time you log in, which can be a vulnerability in and of itself, primarily because if you're typing in an SSH password, I don't know, somewhere in an airport or in a bar or something like that for your server because you want to check something out, keep in mind somebody could be looking over your shoulder. Maybe no, maybe people are not that proficient, so they can catch all the keys with their eyes that you press on the keyboard. But what they can definitely get is the length. I mean, they can see or count how many times have you pressed the key on the keyboard. And if they catch a few letters, oh, you're in a world of hurt. Anyway, think of SE Linux as internal system security and firewall or IP tables as external system security. So IP tables ensures that you prevent malicious traffic, and SE Linux pretty much prevents from any malicious activity happening within the system itself. SE Linux can be extremely problematic if not configured properly, I would say, and it can definitely pose problems there, but all it takes is a bit of configuration, is a bit of understanding, and you're good to go. Over time you will acquire habits which will pretty much uh, eliminate those mistakes that people tend to make over a course of time. Restore default file context, there nothing special. Use Boolean settings. Well, you can actually turn SE Linux off because it has a configuration file. So you just open up a configuration file, literally just type in English language, in plain English language. Do you want it to be on, off, or there are three modes. Well, they're not on and off. They're basically you can configure it to go easy, so to say, to go easy on things, to not just block everything off. You can configure it to be extremely strict, or you can shut it off altogether. In any case, that I do believe that that's the end of the page. Yep, there we go. These are the subjects that will be covered in this portion of the exam. However, I'm not going to cover them in the same order that they were listed in here, but I will cover them. I will demonstrate how to do these things. One more thing to keep in mind is that these things tend to change. So at the time of when I made this course, a few things might change, but 90% of content, or should I say 95% of content, pretty much always remains the same. So you don't have to worry about that there. Also, Now, since we're beginning the Red Hat portion of the course, please keep in mind any and all questions that you have for me,